The story of the original charter of the law. The Sagas of the Kings of Norway. The first part of the original charter of the law, written by Snorri Sturluson, that we will consider is the Sagas of the Kings of Norway. In the early 1100s, there was a boy in his early teens named Roger II, who had succeeded his father to the title that the Norwegian Vikings from near Normandy, France, who had just completed the conquest of the island of Sicily, had given him. That title was Sikkel Jarl, the Earl of Sicily. However, young Roger II was really the ruler of the entire Mediterranean area. The Vikings from Sicily had just led the first crusade to its successful conclusion on the Levant coast, the east coast of the Mediterranean. The Byzantine emperor in Constantinople would beget his son, an heir from Roger's sister. The German Roman emperor in Europe proper would beget his son and heir from Roger's daughter. Roger I had been a brilliant and successful conqueror. Roger II showed the promise of being an equally or more brilliant and successful leader that he would become in a few years. He should be made a king instead of just an earl. But who could do that? Who had the authority over all of the seas that the Norwegian Viking ships now controlled, that would be recognized as a binding authority over all of those ships? The Byzantine emperor at Constantinople, or the ecumenical patriarch, who was the supreme religious leader of that part of the world? Hardly. These Vikings were actively pushing a plan that would eventually bring Constantinople down in ruins. The Holy Roman Emperor, theoretically ruling most of Central Europe? The Pope? No, these were both jokes to these rulers of the Atlantic. Who had authority among them? When they began their drive to take over the Atlantic more than 200 years earlier, certain of the people with claims to the ancient authority of Norway began struggling for the right to rule all of Norway. The ones who succeeded were thereafter known as the Kings of Norway. Snorri Sturluson wrote a history of each of those kings up till his day. Each of those histories is called a saga. In Roger II's day, a man who had that title was King Sigurd Jorsalfar. King Sigurd, the Jerusalem farer, or crusader. King Sigurd left Norway with his fleet and touched land at the different places now ruled by Northmen beyond the seas of Norway. These included England and France. He also stopped in Spain. His trip lasted from 1107 to 1110 AD. When he got to Sikkel, as the Northmen called Sicily, a meeting was prepared with a kingly throne for him to sit on. At that meeting, which took place in those early years of the 1100s, from his kingly throne, he reached down, took the hand of the young Earl Roger, and said that it wasn't right that a man with as much position as Roger should only be an earl. He said that Roger also should be a king. With that, he drew the young Roger up to stand at the same kingly level where he was. From that moment, when King Sigurd Jorsalfar created the young Roger a king, the Norman kingdom of the two Sicilies lasted down until Garibaldi united Italy in the mid-1800s. However, in addition to the sagas that Snorri Sturluson wrote of the kings of Norway, who from the mid-800s AD had struggled to rule all of Norway, and by the time of the Fourth Crusade in Snorri's own day had been the prime movers in the movement at that time, in effect permanently destroyed what was left of the Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire ruled from Constantinople. Snorri Sturluson also wrote a saga about the people who had brought the ancient authority claimed by the kings of Norway to Norway. These people were the forefathers of the leaders who lived between the 1st century and the 800s AD and were called the Ynglinga. Their saga is called the Ynglinga Saga. The part in that saga that is of such interest in the large first part of that saga that tells the story of how the authority of the Ynglings came to Scandinavia. The following is that story, the English translation from which we quote was translated from the Icelandic language in the 1840s.